Right. Just opening up the space for everybody to enter. Welcome everybody who's already here. So wonderful to see you all. And yeah, wonderful. Just seeing. Oh, it's so nice. All these lovely faces. Thank you, everyone. We're just taking a little while to gather us all together today. This beautiful conference, Compassion and Wisdom in Action, facilitated by the Foundation for Developing Wisdom and Compassion. So it's so wonderful seeing everyone, and I'm so looking forward to this session. What a joyful experience again to be here with Craig Mackie. But before I introduce him, I'll wait a little longer before everybody sort of entered. And yeah, we just, it's my first time that I'm moderating these kind of sessions as well. So I'm getting a little bit familiar with that. Not my own training or session. So it's good to see what's needed here. Now, let me see. Perhaps Angela or Michaela could give me a sort of heads up when you think everybody is sort of in the room, or
you can start because people keep on arriving, but you okay. Go ahead.
That's great. Okay, everyone. So very, very welcome. My name is Claudia van Zuiden. I'm with you today from the Netherlands. It's wonderful to be here. I'm also one of the facilitators of one of the programs of universal education. So it's so wonderful to be with the family today and to see so many nice new faces as well. So welcome, and thanks everybody for organizing this. It's just so wonderful to see how all the ripples are spreading out into the world and bringing so much more joy and skillful means for everybody to reach out to. So it's such a delightful experience today. So today we are going to have a wonderful speaker, Craig Mackie. And Craig is the director of Essential Change and instructor of the AMM Mind program at the University of Toronto. He's also a senior faculty for the Foundation for Developing Compassion and Wisdom in the 16 Guidelines. He has worked for decades in therapeutic settings, including wilderness and adventure-based therapy, residential addiction treatment, and urban marginalized capacity building, and in the virtual space. Prior to his professional training, he was a member of 2 different national teams representing Canada in biathlon and ultimate, and attending the 1998 Nagano Olympics as a member of Team Canada. So quite a lot. He's a clinical social worker, and he's currently in a private practice, and he uses transformative mindfulness methods in psychotherapy, specializing in people who have experienced intergenerational trauma. He's taught mindfulness in numerous settings, schools, corporate, non-for-profit sectors, universities, and so forth. And he's here with us today to facilitate a workshop on compassion as the motivation and wisdom as the guide. We will have a format. He will speak about 35 to 40 minutes, and hopefully there will be time after to ask some questions. You'll be going into breakout rooms, hopefully, and then we'll come back together. So without further ado, everybody, let us hear Craig. A great welcome to Craig. Nice to see you, Craig. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Welcome, everyone. I actually prepared a little bit longer than that. I'll be doing an hour and a half in total, not an hour. So we'll probably go a little bit just to prepare for that. But before we begin, from my side, I'd like to just do a land acknowledgement. To acknowledge the first peoples of the area that I come from, the people of Kitigan-Zibi and the people of Odawa. And may this work that we do nurture that connection to the land and to work towards decolonization. And so I just invite you to acknowledge whatever land you're on, the history of it, the people who cared for it before you, and how you wish to relate to that. Okay. Lovely to see you all. Lovely to be here. We're going to be doing 4 practices, or 3 practices, 3.5 practices today. And the intention behind this workshop from my side is to give us some tools to relate to any transformative process, any process that we are engaged in that will bring change, healing, education, facilitation for ourselves and for working with others at whatever scale, whether that's working with individuals, groups, communities, organizations, or society at large. So it rests on, this work rests on a very broad and deep framework and theoretical model we're not necessarily going to get into today fully. We're going to focus on the practices, the transformative elements that I have learned and been taught and practiced over the last many years, decades of working with folks in my own healing. And so the language I use is very personal. And so my invitation to you is to try and listen and integrate it into what you already know. And if there's a new concept or a new word or a new description that might help you as well, also meet that with curiosity and openness. We're talking about compassion and wisdom. One of the most interesting findings from the neuroscience of compassion has been measuring and looking at what systems get activated when we are expressing compassion or in a compassionate mode. And so this is the work of Richie Davidson and other compassion researchers. And really what we're talking about is this capacity for love. And so when we engage compassionately, the same parts of our nervous system, the same parts of our physiology get activated when we are relating to something that we love. So this includes the pleasure centers. This includes a mix of emotions and biochemistry and things like that. So we're going to use love, actually, and we're going to use this sort of differentiation between love and craving and attachment and things like that to try and strengthen our understanding and our ability to express compassion, which is to say our embodiment of compassion. This is the main sort of framework I want you to approach compassion with, which is the same framework as love. The other component is wisdom. And how can we use wisdom as a guide? How can we use experience, knowledge, insight, a deep knowing, a clear view, ability to see things without obscurations? How can we use these qualities to guide us more? And what happens when we combine these two, right? Often they're talked about the 2 wings of the bird within the Buddhist context. And so we're actually going to look at a practice that deals with them separately and then brings them together. That's going to be the 3rd practice that we do today. The first 2 practices are about grounding and about connecting to a space of universal wisdom and compassion. The grounding practice that we're going to explore is a way to connect to something greater than ourselves, which is vital in terms of working with attachment, right? If we're going to identify ourselves from an egocentric, self-centered view, this requires us to attach to the smallness of us. And so we're going to experiment with identifying and connecting to something greater. And we're going to use a grounding, a roots visualization for that. The second practice that we're going to do is about connecting to something that we're going to call a universal space. Place where our higher selves, other people have described it, the highest self, the highest version of ourself resides. A place where we can ask for help and identify with that. And then, of course, the third practice is a transformative practice, which I alluded to already, which involves bringing about compassion and wisdom and combining them together. So as a sort of diagram, which I'm sorry I didn't draw, the three components here is grounding downwards, connecting upwards, and connecting out. Yeah, so this is the field of embodiment that I want for us to consider, is that we can create a field around us into which we bring any suffering or any experience, actually, any joy, anything. And by creating that field, we can actually sit with basically any experience, whether it's a piece of our own story or history or experience, whether we're bringing somebody else into that field for healing or transformation, or whether we're bringing a concept, an idea, anything within our experiential field. So these are serious topics, and I want you to try and bring some curiosity, of course, and some joy if you can. Often we will meet things that can be intense and almost absurd, right? It's like if we're really doing some inner transformative work, we can meet up against things that are very big and very overwhelming. Which is to say, in this work and for today's practices, I want you to share the responsibility with me in terms of your own safety. Giving yourself permission to pull out or bring yourself out of any of these practices, or shift into an observer mode rather than a depth or experiential mode, so that you can be responsible for your own safety. We don't want, if you happen to be overwhelmed, please ground yourself, end your participation, take care of yourself in any way. With the beauty of technology, you can always go back and do the practices again, building familiarity like that, right? So you can also just sit and listen if you're more comfortable doing that. We will, another important sort of element is the element of integration and embodiment, or these two concepts. So if you don't already have a piece of paper or something to record with, I invite you to grab something, because after each of these practices, I'm going to be asking you about how they felt. Perfect, we got some pens already. So I want you to record how they felt. I want you to record any other sensory information, images, colors, shapes. And also, is there any insight or wisdom? So this is engaging in sort of a reflective mode as well, or a deep knowing. There's lots of ways of knowing. So we're using an integrative methodology here to open up all sort of levels or ways or pathways to inform and to learn from. Okay, great. So why don't we do our first practice together, which is the grounding practice. I'm going to explain this a little bit more, and then we're going to get into it. So this practice is using our bodies and the kinesthetic information, but also our imagination. So there's going to be an element of connecting and observing, and an element of visualization. And if you haven't done visualization before, that's completely fine. It's basically just using your imagination, right? We're constantly using our imagination. And so here we're just going to use it in a particular way. I use the earth as a form that is larger than myself, and I try and connect with that. And I'll be doing that as the instruction. But as a concept, you might actually pick something else that is a physical form or has some physicality to it, some material greatness. It can be a system, it can be the weather, it can be the sun, it can be anything. But as the idea is having a physical form that we connect to yes, so that's the idea. All right, so I'm going to be using the earth. And we're going to be connecting with roots to it, or that's the instruction at least. This is an intuitive practice or a receptive practice. So I'm going to be giving you some instruction around it, but I want you to pay attention to whatever shows up for you and receive it, as if each of the instructions I give to you are an opportunity to explore, not an imperative to do it in a particular way. So I want you to receive those instructions and receive what you are also experiencing. Okay, so grounding down. So we'll do this as an inner practice. So I invite you to just find a comfortable position. Something that's supported and awake. You can do this with your eyes open or eyes closed. I'd like to just connect with an intention for this practice, which is to bring some presence, just present awareness, curiosity, to connecting to a system or a field that is greater than ourselves. And if you have your own intention that you'd like to set, please do so now, just inside. Taking a few breaths, just bringing some awareness. If it feels comfortable to do so, noticing the body. And perhaps intentionally letting go of any of the busyness that got you here. Allowing yourself to arrive. Just slowly, gradually bringing your awareness down in the body to wherever you're in touch with the cushion or the floor. And just notice the body resting, pressure downwards. Take a moment to acknowledge the earth beneath you. even if it's through concrete, many floors or stories, wherever you are. See if you can get a sense of the earth, its physical presence. And then consider what it might be like to connect to the earth. If you had roots, what would they look like? Just taking a few breaths to allow whatever shows up, the size, the shape, the direction, the curiosity that comes. And if it helps to do so, you can keep breathing into these roots as if the exhale allowing more space, more connection downwards. And then just notice how that feels. Notice how that looks, if there's an image, color, shape, size, direction. And check to see what you know. If there's any insight or sense of knowing just by connecting in this way. And with the knowledge or the awareness, you can always return to these roots. Just taking a breath, see if you can offer some gratitude, appreciation for whatever showed up, even if it's comfortable or uncomfortable. And also expressing some gratitude towards yourself and all the conditions that allowed you to practice in this way. And then slowly returning your attention back. Of course, I invite you to move in any way that's nurturing as you return your awareness outwards. So what I'd like you to do now is just take a moment, if there's anything you want to record, feeling, sense, emotion, insight. Just write those down. Then if you also just want to reflect, taking it in, just honor that. We'll just take 30 seconds to a minute just to notice. So just to let you know that there is no right or wrong or good or bad. Often we can have judgment about the roots that didn't show up or did show up, or I wasn't able to do that, or something went wrong, or am I doing this right? All that stuff, right? That's just the mind trying to integrate. But see if you can just take whatever you've experienced as information. Also knowing that if you're not familiar with these types of practices or this practice, these things take practice to get to know both the rhythm, the content, and your own selves, right? I'm just going to share briefly how I use this practice. Basically, I can use it or have used it before doing anything as a wake-up practice. So that's one possibility. In which case the roots are serving the image in the practice is serving at least two functions. One is to connect me, because I find comfort in connecting. And the other as information. It's like, oh, that's what my roots are showing up today as. Maybe that means I need this. Maybe I need to attend to myself in this way, or I need to transform something to meet my day. So you can use it as sort of a bit of a baseline guide. And the other way that I do this is whenever I'm meeting with someone or doing my own healing work. Okay, so I always connect roots down first. And in that way, it for me at least brings a sense of grounding, a sense of stability, that whatever that might arise, I can take actually an experience. And I think of the roots as having two functions. One is as a tree is grounded, right? It always comes back to center because it has a firm foundation. And the other is that if anything comes into my field of experience that doesn't serve me or I need to let go of, I can actually send it down to the earth and let her deal with it and let her metabolize it. And so that it's something that doesn't stick to me. All right. So it's just an added layer that I've worked with over the years. So I'm not doing it on my own. I'm always connected to a greater system than myself. As I've become more familiar with this practice, I can do it very quickly and I can sort of titrate. So that if I'm in a session, so I do a lot of healing work with individuals and groups. If I'm in a session, I can ground myself very quickly just with a breath, even an exhale, and just remember, boom, roots, okay, and then I come back. So the more familiar with, the more it sort of shows up like that as, yeah, so there we go. So if anyone wants to share even one word or two words of a sense that they got from this practice in the chat, sometimes that can be nice. If you have a question as well, I'll try to get to some of the questions at the end. So if you have a specific question, you can also put that in the chat there. So feel free to share. Coming home. Great. So a few of the comments so far, I felt like coming home, calm, calma, guidada, felt connected and free, feeling one with the earth. Wonderful, thank you. Grounded, stronger. They can be uneven, yes, very good. So again, there's all sorts of information showing up here. Perfect. So this is grounding down. Now let's go to grounding up or connecting up. So this next practice is also a visualization, but you can work with it on many different levels. You can work with it on the conceptual level, I think an aesthetic level as well. So if we're grounding to a system beneath us physically, we can also ground energetically or connect to a broader field of awareness. energetically. Some people call it like the most observing eye. You know, there's a thing that's engaging here, there's a thing that's engaging in myself, and then there's a thing that's able to observe me. So I'm able to connect on those three levels. So that's sometimes talked about in meditation. We're constantly identifying ourselves with experiences, which forms attachment, right? And therein is generated suffering. So if you're doing your own healing work, or you're doing some work with others, transformative work, you will probably engage with some form of attachment, which will lead to your reactive self, automatic pilots, etc. In this practice, we're just identifying, or we're building a connection with our highest self, or the self that is connected to all wisdom and compassion. So thinking of it as a universal plane, or a plane of consciousness or awareness that I can tap into. So the language gets a little esoteric, huh? It gets a little bit like, okay, what is this? What's happening here? But the very concrete or practical way of doing this is to just imagine a space. It's like you're imagining your mind, really. And bring in teachers and guides. Imagine them coming in, showing up. People who have cared for you, loved you, people who have taught you, who have been mentors. This can be people you know, or beings you know personally, or beings who've showed up in other ways. It can also be animals and places as well. Right? And we're going to imagine all of them gathering there and just inviting a connection down to us. All right. And again, the language gets sort of very esoteric in a certain sense, because we're trying to describe an energetic connection or an awareness that is non-physical. So in order to imagine it, we have to give it a physical form, which can show up as an image. Okay, so I'm going to invite you to imagine it as an energy or a light or something like that connecting down with yourself. And we'll notice where it connects and how it connects. Okay. So let's give it a shot. Let's give it a try. And again, if this is a new practice, just listen, take it in, open, receive, work with your intuition, give yourself permission to try it out. So just take a breath, bringing your attention inwards. Again, noticing the body, and if it helps to connect with the roots, just through a few breaths, please do so. The intention for this practice, the wish, is that may we connect to an expansive mind, opening our minds to the possibility, connecting with the universal plane of wisdom and compassion, where all of our good teachers, guides, and mentors reside, so that we may also benefit from that connection. Again, just connecting with the body and roots for a moment. And start to imagine a space above your head. A universal open plane. It's full of curiosity and potential. And then into that space, begin to invite your greatest teachers, and guides, and mentors. If they have a physical form, just imagine their physical form entering that space. Just keep inviting them, allowing them to show up. For some, you might ask their permission to come, seeing if they show up. Just really opening to their good qualities, their expression of wisdom, their expression of compassion, what other good qualities they have. Just imagine them showing up. You may also notice an appreciation for that. Just what it's like to be aware of that. Just ask to be shown from this space something that represents all of these good qualities. And invite a connection downwards to yourself. Just imagining it. It can be a form of light or energy. And notice what it's like to connect. If it comes through the top of the head or the third eye, or it just comes into the body. Just really notice this connection. Invite it even more. And just notice how it feels to be connected in this way. If there's any sensation, emotion. And then consider your deepest knowing. What do you most know? You're connected like this. And with a few breaths of appreciation to the space and all those good beings, if you can express some gratitude. Also expressing some gratitude to yourselves for practicing in this way. We're going to actually stay connected to this space, so we're not going to dissolve the connection, but we're just going to gently shift the awareness outwards, bringing the attention back to the room, back to the group. And I invite you to move in any way that feels nurturing, just for a moment. And also, if it feels right to record anything, just writing, again, a feeling, sense. And if there's any image you wish to write down or draw, go ahead. And any knowing or insight. It's going to take, again, 30 seconds to a minute just to jot a few things down. So I'd like to share how I use this practice now and how I've also taught it. So again, one of those practices that I use all the time in many different circumstances. If I'm doing my own healing work, I'll do the roots first, and then I'll connect up. And if I'm trying to encounter something from my side that is very challenging, I'll ask for help from this connection. And I'll try and receive. It's like getting myself out of the way, getting my patterns, the neurology, the neurophysiology that is keeping me trapped, right? Cycling, trying to solve the problem with the same mind that created it. And if I can connect with that part, if I can connect with that connection, really, I start to receive more information. I can totally reframe it. Okay? When I'm facilitating for others in individual or group, I imagine the triangle, it sort of starts to begin to form a triangle, downwards, upwards, and then I imagine the possibility that somebody else can connect to that space as well. And part of my facilitation is to work with them to actually look at the barriers that might prevent them from connecting there, and to consider that they also have deep wisdom and deep compassion that comes from there as well. So that we're, again, the responsibility for change work, transformation, facilitation doesn't rely on me. It relies on me creating the field of possibilities for their deepest knowing, deepest wisdom to show up. Remembering that there's a lot, it can be a lot of work to do there in order for that to happen, and a lot of barriers to that. So in group setting, it's like an umbrella or a link that can go to everyone. Okay, so something else that how I've used this practice, especially during COVID, is working with organizations that are working from home and feeling very disconnected. And so just imagining them connecting to a network that is still there. They just they're not physically connected in the same space. So you can work with this idea at a very big level as well, sort of limitless. And have found that really helps, especially people in social work and social services who are dealing with a lot of challenges for other folks. If they're feeling isolated or disconnected from their team, it can really diminish and create a lot of suffering and a lot of attachment, a lot of challenging energy to work with. We're not dissolving it right now because we're going to continue to use it. But the sort of last step is that when we're finished working, we can dissolve that connection, especially if we're connecting to others. Yeah, because we want to let them go and do their own thing. We don't want to be, on the date with them that evening or in the fight with their partner or whatever, right? So it's dissolving, and we'll do. I'll see if I try and remember, but I'll just tell you how to dissolve it anyways. Which is, you just imagine the connection sort of separating in the middle, so that it sort of goes back to you and back to the space. So it's sort of equal parts. And if we really wanted to add that to the connecting up, we sort of have this. Right now we did it connecting downwards because often that's easier for people to conceive of first. But if we're doing sort of the next sort of addition to that practices, we're actually noticing where it connects in your body. For me, it's the heart and the base. So it comes up through here and there, and I actually notice it connecting in the middle. So it's meeting there. Okay, so the dissolving is like that. So that's how it works for me, at least. And again, I'll just invite folks to, if you feel like sharing just a word or how it felt, and to connect in this way, you can do so in the chat. Yeah, and just as you're doing that, I'll add a few more little points to that. Is we don't, I'm sort of describing it in energetic terms, and you can certainly describe this sort of practice in spiritual terms or religious terms or faith-based terms. But really, if you just imagine somebody with good qualities and how they've affected you, and you feel that, you're forming a connection already, right? There would be no, especially if they're not physically present with you, there would be no resonance if you didn't have a connection. So just based, on a very materialistic level, on a very, physiological level, we can just consider that those connections exist. And there's wonderful descriptions through interpersonal neurobiology and looking at the interwiring and the intersubjectivity and phenomenology, which are very important descriptions. But if you're just imagining this person, you're saying, thank you, I appreciate you, or please help me, right? There's an energetic connection there already, and it can be very deep and a very good way to ask for help. Okay. Great, so surprise, yes. Other people showed up, some hesitation to receive, of course, it's all really good. Wow, yeah, so showing up in mystical moments. There's a wonderful, some descriptions of like mythical or mystical moments where we have an unexplainable connection, right? So this is also really interesting too. Guides became one, assimilated them, qualities spread to all parts of my body, all encompassing. Thank you. Open-heartedness, wonderful. So these are all, and again, just acknowledge if there's resistance or like the unfamiliarity with this, that's okay. Okay, so those are the 2 warm-up practices. Now let's get to the juicy practices, which is a bit of transformation. But it's good that we've done them already because we're already engaging in an integrative, receptive way. And those 2 practices are really can be really helpful when we are trying to be very intentional about the field we're creating inside us and around us. And so that field that I'm talking about is we're going to do some work on compassion, accessing it through love. How do I create the field inside and around me that is infused with love? And then what is it like to bring in wisdom as well? So we're going to be doing some transformative work on those 2 qualities. First, we're going to look at compassion and an experience of compassion, experience of love. And then we're going to look at wisdom. And we're going to do similar practices on each. And then we're going to do a 3rd step, which is what happens when you sort of bring these 2 together and ask them to meet or join or balance. Okay. So, love, yes. In a lot of self-compassion practices and loving kindness metta practices, we so if you're familiar with those, this will be somewhat familiar, but we basically generate an object. We generate a person that elicits a feeling for us, and so we're going to do that as well. It can be a person past, present, living, it can be a being, it can be an animal, that doesn't matter. But we're going to evoke that as a way to awaken and make neuroplastic the wiring around love and connection. Okay, and then we're going to drop into that experience, sort of leaving the object and going into our own embodied experience of what that is, and see what happens if we give it some more attention and enhance it. We have to, so it's sort of a word of caution. It's like we're dropping into some powerful stuff here. So sometimes there can be a ferocious love that shows up, right? Especially if we introduce the notion of suffering, that somebody else who we're incredibly connected to is suffering or has the potential to suffer. So this, I'm just speaking from my own experience here, can show up as an incredibly, almost chaotic and frantic force. Desperation, you know, really wishing to alleviate their suffering. And that's not a bad thing, but it can be quite a powerful thing. And if you want some of the, sort of pitfalls to this, or traps that can, go back and look at Venerable Rubina's talk, because she references a lot of the barriers that happen when we're working with attachment and love, or we're working with our own minds. So we're not going to get into too many of the barriers right now, which would require, further practice. But if you want a good description and sort of awareness of the signposts, then listen to her talk from the other day. So we're going to generate this experience, drop into our own, or generate the object, drop into our own experience of it, and then enhance it. Then we're going to do the same for wisdom. And then bring the two together. Okay? So this is, again, a receptive practice. Trust your intuition. Give yourself permission to feel, to experience, to receive. And also just being aware, again, of your own safety, your own limitations that are completely up to you to decide the depth to which you do this practice. So please honor. So I invite you just to find a comfortable position, dropping inside. Just first connecting with the intention of this practice, that by exploring compassion and wisdom, may it bring healing, may it bring insight, may it bring information that's beneficial to you, to ourselves, and to others as well. If you have your own intention, please set it now in your own way. And then breathe that out, let it go, as if you were just opening up to possibility, field of awareness. Take a few breaths to connect with some roots, just the physical realms, physical systems that are greater than ourselves. Take a few moments to connect up to a space of universal compassion, universal wisdom, teachers, guides, just allowing that connection to show itself again. And then begin to imagine a blank screen or open space in front of you. And invite a being who invokes the feeling of love. It's okay if more than one shows up. You can always do this practice with someone else. Just allowing one being. Getting a sense of their presence. If they have a physical form, just noticing their posture, their body, their movements, their expressions. And then becoming aware of your connection to them, the love you feel for them. And just notice the different aspects of this love, the sensations that arise for you. The power. The energy. You may also notice the protective force of love, a deep wish for them to be well. Just drop into your own body, your own experience to notice how that feels for you, where you feel it. Notice the emotion. What is any other information, any colors or shapes or energy that resonates with this feeling of love? You might even check to see how old it is. And what's the wisdom that this carries, this part of you, this resonance of love? What do you know? And just hold this in awareness. See if you can connect again with this space of universal love and compassion, of wisdom, and check to see what it might be like to allow this feeling, this power, this force to grow. And ask for help, just to allow it to transform in a way that's even more beneficial. Consider that. Breathe into it. And watch what happens if anything changes. Notice the feeling. Notice any images or sensory information that comes. And check to see what you know just based on this. And then with a breath of gratitude and appreciation for the being that evoked this in you. And a breath of gratitude and appreciation for yourselves. Just bringing your awareness outwards. Take a moment to record anything, writing down, drawing what felt, images, representations, and your wisdom. What you know. Okay, take another 30 seconds to just record anything or reflect. And we'll do the next part. Okay, hang in there, everyone. This is a lot. It's good though. Stay present as much as possible. We're going to do a similar practice on wisdom now. So just taking compassion, we'll return to it in a bit, putting it over here. And the description that I'm going to give you around wisdom comes from the title of this talk, which is going to a moment or a type of wisdom that you have used as a guide or that has guided you. So this is, it can be evoked from a moment of insight, a revelation, an aha, or it can be evoked by recalling something that you just know. You don't have to question it. A moment of deep knowing. So we also know that wisdom comes from experiences and from integrating those experiences, right? So it often will show up in an action as well to help guide a decision. Okay, so we're going to be using, whereas we use the being as an object of awareness for love and compassion, we're going to use your own sense of knowing and using literally any example of that for yourself. Something you really know. Again, can show up in a moment of clarity. All right. And then we're going to do some inquiry around that. Okay. When we're working with something slightly abstract like this as well, there can be the cognitive mind can come online and just be like, I don't know what that is. What the heck? So I invite you, if that is showing up for you, just to sit, just go into the practice with open curiosity as much as possible. Let go of any expectation, judgment, if that's showing up. And just trust your intuition that something will show up. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. You can just sit with us. All right. So taking a breath. We've already set the intention, but we can return to it for a moment. That by doing this practice with wisdom now, may it be of benefit to ourselves or others. Taking a breath to connect down with the roots. Taking a breath to connect up to this universal plane of wisdom and compassion. And then generating a sense of openness, potential. It's like you're imagining a field of possibility or a blank screen in front of you. Begin to open to a deep knowing, a piece of wisdom. Consider just recalling, bringing to mind either a moment of knowing or something that has consistently shown up in different circumstances. Just consider a piece of wisdom that you carry and allow it to show itself to you. And just notice where it came from. If it came from anywhere, an experience, an individual, teacher, or if it's something that arose just from its own being. Just notice where this wisdom comes from. Notice also how this wisdom helps you, how it may have guided you, or it's guiding you now. And drop into the feeling that comes with this knowing. How does it feel in the body? Notice any sensations or general feelings and emotions that show up just by holding this piece of wisdom. Just notice any other information, any images, colors, shapes that associate with this. You might also check to see how old this feeling is, or this wisdom is. How old is it? And what do you most know when you're in this wisdom? When you're feeling it, what do you most know? And connecting again with your highest self that is in this plane of wisdom and compassion. Just check to see, what would it be like to allow this knowing, this way of being, this embodied wisdom, what would it be like to let it transform in a way that is even more beneficial? And then ask for help. Ask for help. Let go and observe what happens. Just check to see how it now feels. And check to see what you now know. And with a breath of appreciation for this wisdom that showed up, a breath of appreciation for yourselves for doing this practice. Bring your attention outwards, and I invite you to write down and record anything on the wisdom side, feeling, sensation, any images, in any knowing that comes from it. for the reminder, I was on mute. We're going to do the last step, which is a combination, bringing the two together. See what happens. Okay. Just take a few moments. Take a few breaths. Just to connect again with the roots. Keep connecting with the highest self, universal love, compassion, wisdom. And then bringing to mind both of these qualities, these experiences. First, aware of compassion, love. Just noticing the feeling, the image, the wisdom that comes with that. And then bringing to mind this deep knowing of wisdom as the guide. Noticing the feeling, the images, sensations, and the knowing that comes with that. And then just consider introducing these two, letting go of any division between the two, and just asking for help, for wisdom and compassion to mix together. Then let go and observe. Staying present and observing, asking for help again if you need to, it's fine. Allowing for these two qualities to mix, noticing how it feels, sensory information. You can even notice any resistance, that's okay too. Just invite it, welcome it. And observing, taking note of the feeling, any images or sensations. What do you now know? Taking a breath of appreciation again for yourselves, for all of this receiving. And then bringing your attention outwards. And take a moment to record, write down any observations, feeling, senses, and knowing. Okay, so while you're doing that, I'm also just going to share a little bit about what can happen in this work. So often, well, I'd like to ask you and just consider. I'm gonna give it a little bit of time for questions right now, but I'm gonna make a few more points first. But consider what a next step might be based on what you've encountered from today. It can be anything. And this is sort of in the category of integration. How do I take this experience and integrate it, whether it's through more practice, whether it's more inner work, or whether it's just a piece of information that I want to retain. Integration can also happen physiologically and energetically when we're doing work like this. So your body might need to release something, it might need to be tended to in a particular way. This can show up as, well, hopefully self-care, so take care of yourself. And you can also bring up layers and other levels that need attending to. I mentioned resistance in the closing instruction there. And resistance is not a bad thing. I'm not using that as like a negative aspect. But if there's any doubt, any questioning, any feeling of like, oh, I'm not quite ready to go there, it just means there's another level or layer to inquire about and to practice on. So resistance is information. If you do have something that is useful, beneficial, a really good way to increase its integration is to capture it as one word, or an image, or a metaphor. And so when we do that, and we make an association with an image, word, metaphor, something that represents this experiential change, it can help evoke on multiple different levels with multiple different systems, the change and reinforce it. All right, so having a representation for this can be very useful, in which case you can write it down, put it up somewhere as a reminder. You can actually return to it and sort of unlock whatever has happened during this practice just by focusing on that representation. So this last practice was about creating the field around us, right? I mentioned at the beginning, grounding down, connecting up. And here, if we are cultivating wisdom and compassion, we're creating a field of experience. It's a field. I like to describe it as that, in which anything can come into it, and we can hold it, and we can meet that, whatever the object is, the person, our own experience. We can hold it in the field of wisdom and compassion. And when we do that, our relationship to it will inevitably change. Because if it is suffering, right, if it has its own attachment, its own root causes, its own triggers, its own physiology associated with it, simply by holding it in that field, there is a potential for our relationship for it to change. In which case, the attachments and the patterns around that suffering ultimately can transform. There are other ingredients that can help, certainly helpers, guides, other people who, therapists, etc., who can enhance them and help you work through all sorts of barriers to combining these two qualities and to meeting anything with them. So that's really important to notice. I'm going to quickly do, because I don't want to run into time, I want to leave space for questions, 4 minutes, but I also want to make sure we do a dedication just of the work that we've just done. And so the sort of pieces that we're not getting to is purification, forgiveness, and dedication. So when you do work like this, or you do any transformative work, it's important to do those things so that we can learn and we can continue and we can not have the transformation or even the intention behind the transformation, motivation behind it, create more attachment, which would result in more suffering. So the best way to, well, one way to dedicate is just to drop your focus inside for a second. Generate some appreciation, some gratitude for all the effort that you have put in, all the good energy that you've put in to being here, all the things you've received, universal plane, all the teachers and guides that have contributed. Notice that there already is benefit for you. And then dedicate this work, this energy, this effort, this sharing, this connection to another being or beings so that they may also benefit. So it's just sending a wish. May the work that we've done today, may our efforts also benefit them, and then send that out to them. So I personally would like to dedicate this to my friend and colleague Arunus and his partner Sharon. And then just when you're ready, come back. Okay. I am so sorry that I did not leave time. Well, I'm kind of not sorry too. There's a lot of stuff that I have to get in today. And so here we are with a few minutes left. I'm happy to go over time, but yeah. Any questions or comments? Great. Okay. Feels complete. It's like, I have so many questions, but we don't have time, so I'm not going to ask them, which is okay too. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. Well, Craig, I think everybody's maybe a bit speechless as well. I think it was a very incredible deep session. I think what you offered here, the integration of compassion and wisdom through this practice is very profound, perhaps. I can only speak for myself, but I really, really benefited from this. So thank you so much for this, for sharing this this wisdom with us that came from you, and this intuitive wisdom perhaps as well. It's just very profound, and I think very transformative, and I can see why this is so related to your work as well, and how this can so be incredibly helpful. So thank you so much for sharing this great skillful means this for us to develop compassion and to connect with our wisdom as our guide. So thank you so much, Craig. And yeah, thanks everybody for joining. I think it was an incredibly profound session again, and wonderful that that we were all here, and I loved your dedication already. Craig, how you did that, it was beautiful. So certainly dedicate us coming together in that way, that we may benefit numberless beings with our beautiful efforts today here, and all the work that FDCW has done. And if anybody wishes to support, of course, the universal education programs, then please go to the website and see how you can help in any way, or spread the word, or anything that is available in your means to create more awareness for people that we have these amazing tools available. So thank you so much, Greg. Thank you so much, everybody. And
let me just add one more thing, is that the aspiration is to teach this in a series of trainings. And so I've sort of condensed it, part of it down very much here, right? But all of these things, and all of the other folks, of course, in the conference are touching on many of these elements, right? And the importance of different practices that contribute to this. So I'm hoping, certainly in the next few months, the next year, to have some more training as a facilitation specifically for universal education and the FDCW. So there's a lot of skills here, and that's the aspiration, is to all out into a developmental path for them.
Wow, great. That's another thing to look forward to then. Mark, anything else that we need to be shared before we close the session?
No, I think for everyone to unmute themselves and say thank you and say goodbye. Thank you and goodbye to Craig and to Claudia. Thank you very much, and to Edgar, who is translating, and to all of you. Really, thank you so much.
And to please join for Hilary McMichael's session at 6 p.m. on transformation. I'm really, really looking forward to that. And thank you so much, Craig. That was just wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you, Claudia.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.